What's up, guys? It's your girl Mac Cox with Maccouture Crafting. Yay! We have made it to yet another video. This one is going to be interesting. I went on a field trip with my quilt guild, which is the Los Angeles Modern Quilt Guild, and I'm really loving where this guild is going. When I first started, it didn't seem like they were doing so much stuff, but now it's just jam-packed, full of things happening. One of the things was we went to a museum to see a quilt exhibit. Now, this exhibit is a little controversial in in the circle. Lots and lots and lots of conversation about this particular exhibit. This exhibit was at the what is it? The California African American Museum of Art. I think that's California African American Museum, which is over on Exposition down in LA. And the artist, his name is Sandford, and I'm going to share a couple of slides and some pictures, and we'll talk about what we saw. But this was such a cool event. If you are a quilt guild, museum runs, super fun. We enjoyed it. So this is the exhibit. This is the front. This is what you see. And it was called Code Switch. Let me see. And it was by Sandford. Here is one of the pieces. So what he has done is taken quilts that were, I guess, possibly old, possibly tattered, but some look like they were in really good condition. And he has added to them paint and textiles and reworked them and made an exhibit. You can imagine what some of the conversation, well, what the majority of the conversation was about. Lots and lots and lots of conversation about whether or not it's right to take a quilt and then paint over it and then post it. Lots and lots of conversation. People have very strong feelings about doing this to quilts. One of the cool things were all these neat shapes. Now, I don't know if this was the original shape of the quilt, because when you get up on them, the binding looks like it just blends. And so I don't know if these were the original shapes or what. This was a kind of cool one just because of the shape. There are some that I am absolutely obsessed with, and it was these. The 3D ones are the ones that I was really drawn to. You guys know that I'm a paper crafter, and I like to make 3D, like 3D everything. I like to make things kind of come to life and pop out, and I thought these were the coolest pieces ever. There are some that range in size. This one looks like it's big, but it's really actually quite small. And they were all over the walls. And these were definitely the ones that I was most drawn to. You will probably see these all over the house whenever we decide to finally buy it. I loved this idea. There are some that were concave and convex and just really cool. Here's a different angle of the same one. Here's another one. Obviously, I took a lot of pictures of the 3D elements. This is wood, and then it looks like he cut up the quilt, put it on the panels, and serged around the edges, which it looks really cool. And the paint is painted gold. I don't know if you guys can see that. Here is another piece that was in the corner. Look at this, guys. Now, anybody who has been quilting any amount of time knows that the double wedding ring is a beast of a quilt. That's actually one of my bucket list quilts. And he has put some paint, and I believe he added the background fabric to it. Let me just say this. If you ever come across one of my quilts, and you'll know my quilts because they will have a label and probably going forward now a QR code in the front. That's one of the things about this exhibit that we were also talking about, is how we needed some context. Like, where did you find this? Who did this belong to? What do you know about this quilt? We needed a little bit more information. They didn't have a catalog. There was no real information about these quilts, which is unfortunate because I'm sure they have some kind of amazing story. And I don't like when you leave it up to me. I don't want to be thinking about what I'm thinking about. I want to know what you were thinking about when you made this. So I hate that there wasn't like there was no information about these pieces. Off to the side, you would see like the medium that was used and then the name of it. But you kind of had to figure out which one went with what. So I was like, gosh darn it, I just hate that. Double wedding ring. If I ever make a double wedding ring, leave it alone. If you see it, just leave it alone. I would love to do something like this to my own quilt. I would love to. I would absolutely take from this exhibit and try and experiment. But if you see my quilt, do not do this to my quilt. That's a no-no. That's where I land on this. I'm all for it, but I say make your own quilt, paint your own quilt. I just understand how much time and effort and whatnot goes into quilts. And it's funny that I feel that way because I'm one of those people who is not super attached to my quilts after I've done them. Like if I give it to somebody and they give it away or whatever they do. But I do feel some kind of way about somebody taking one of my quilts, painting over it, and then putting it in an art museum. I don't know. Unless it's a collaboration that we previously discussed. That's where I land on that one. Another quilt that has been painted. This one looks kind of cool though. Aside from, what I just said. It's kind of cool what he did to these quilts. Look at the shape of this. I want to know more about this shape. I want to know more about the shapes that he put on top of this, why he did what he did. Love, again, the playing with the shapes. I believe that was put on a wood panel too, and it's huge. It's way up at the top of the museum exhibit, and it's a pretty cool one. This one has some really cool colors to it. Something that somebody was telling me when we were looking at this, it looks like these are the slaves on the boats. I've seen pictures like this before, and I see this image in a lot of his art. So that's pretty cool. There is nothing better than seeing an art exhibit with real artists, and I had the opportunity to do that, and I thought that was pretty cool. Here is pretty much the only information that was posted that we could find. And I'll read a little bit of it. I'm not going to read this whole thing for you, but it says, over the last 2 decades, Los Angeles native Sandford Biggers has been developing a singular body of work that is deeply informed by African American history and tradition. Sandford Biggers Code Switch is the first survey of the artist's quilt-based works, features nearly 50 pieces that seamlessly weave together references to contemporary art, urban culture, sacred geometry, the body, and American symbolism. In 2009, Biggers was commissioned by Hidden City, Philadelphia, a month-long cultural project to produce a work for the Mother Bethel African American Methodist Episcopal Church. A stop on the Underground Railroad. As Biggers began to research the history of the Underground Railroad, he was intrigued by the long debated historical narrative that quilts doubled as signposts along escape routes throughout the 19th century. That's interesting. Some people agree with that, some people don't. That's another huge debate for another time. You can read more about this should you wish. What else did it say? That was very difficult to read from that screen. Over here, it's a little bit bigger. The Codex Series includes mixed media paintings and sculptures done directly on or made from pre-1900 antique quilts. This process, like linguistic code switching, recognizes the plurality. What is I can't read this, guys. I can barely see it, but you get the point. You get the point. What else we got here? Oh, I like this sculpture. So this one is not attached to the wall. This one is. I don't know about the American flag ones. I feel some kind of way about us cutting those up too, but eh. What else? Are those all the pictures that I have? I thought there was some more. Let's see. This one was cool. This is a Lone Star. Look at the quilting on this. Somebody put in some serious work on this quilt. I must have really liked that picture because it just keeps popping up all over the place. This one was kind of neat. Look at the rays I want to say I'm just amazed that he taped this off and masked it off and was able to get such crisp lines. I stared at this for quite some time. Again, I wish I knew more. I think this one has a QR code. Did this one have a QR code? But it took us someplace weird. It's not on the quilt. I think it's next to it. And it took us someplace strange that we didn't get. This is interesting. Now, I like the thought of this. This is actually behind glass. So the quilts weren't painted on. They were put in frames, and then the frame was painted on. And I thought that was kind of cool. Another wall sculpture. Now look at this. This is cross-stitched. Amazing. I don't know why I took the picture cat-a-corner. Photography is so not my gift. This picture, this quilt is hung upside down. Now, what made him do that? I need to know why. Then we're doing some forced perspective. I believe that's what that's called. It's forcing us into the door, which is upside down. I don't know. I've got questions. I think that this is amazing. I've seen people do cross stitch before, but I've never seen a quilt that's cross stitched that I could remember. And I thought it's really interesting. This is a very large piece. It's not small at all. This piece is probably as tall as I am, if not taller. And the cross stitching is beautiful. Another sculpture, and this is one that you could like totally put your head in. It's big. Just put your head right in there. This is log cabins, and I like the design that it makes. He cut a hole in 2 quilts, guys. He totally cut a hole. If you run into one of my quilts, let's not cut a hole in it. I've cut holes in my quilts. You guys have seen that. The Beauty and the Beast one, totally cut a hole in it. I feel good about it. I would feel funny if you cut the hole in the quilt. But look at it. Wow. What a piece. More geometric stuff. This was interesting. All of those flying geese were pieced, and there it's tiny, tiny, tiny piecing. Oh, this was spectacular to see the actual quilt. The painting on the front and the textiles that were put on the front are kind of cool, but the actual piecing, and this fabric is not cotton. It was like silks and all different kinds of things. Really cool, special. I think this one had sequins on it. It does, and more geometry here. And then there were a couple of other exhibits, and the one that I thought was kind of cool was Rites and Rituals, African American Debutante Culture. Pretty cool. I remember Deb's when I was coming up and girls coming out and that kind of thing, and I thought it was really cool to see the making of African American debutante culture in an exhibit. It was really interesting. All right, guys, that is that. Please tell me what your thoughts are. How do you feel about somebody taking a quilt, painting on it, adding to it, and then putting it up? What are your feelings about that? Are you for it? Are you against it? Do you think it's amazing? Would you do it to your own quilts? I'd really like to know your thoughts on that, because when I tell you it was the topic of discussion all throughout the exhibit, that's what happens when you take a bunch of quilters to a quilt exhibit where somebody has taken the quilts and made it their own. So if you made it through this whole video, yay you. I will see you guys on the next one. Okay, bye-bye.